And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
Hey everybody, I'm Tom Vasel, and today we're taking a look at Gloomhaven, Jaws of the Lion. Now, Gloomhaven, the original Gloomhaven game, is the #1 ranked board game in the world. This is according to the Board Game Geek database, the largest board game database that's out there. Gloomhaven is a dungeon crawl or an adventure game where you have these different characters and go out and accomplish missions. There is 90 plus scenarios that you can go through. There's a ton of stuff in the game, but it has appealed to a wide audience, not only because it's a dungeon crawler, but because it has a lot of very strong Euro-style mechanisms that are in the game. It's very, very popular. The sequel to it, Frosthaven, just blew up on Kickstarter, breaking all records there. But in between Gloomhaven and Frosthaven is this small little game. I mean, it's not really small, but compared to Gloomhaven, which is twice the size, more than twice the size it is small. This is Gloomhaven, Jaws of the Lion. And this is a full-blown game, but it's kind of like an introductory game of sorts. If you've never played Gloomhaven before, don't worry about it. This is what you need. This is what you're going to want to get into. If you've never heard of Gloomhaven, don't worry about it. You can play it here, and this game is a way for you to get into the full game if you want to, but even if you just want to play this one by itself, it's going to offer you many, many hours of entertainment. I am not going to go over the full rules of the game. In fact, the sheet that comes in the book here points out Watch It Played with Rodney Smith. You can go see that. But I will give you a lot of the basic ideas and concepts that will hopefully give you an idea of how the game is played. Thus, let's get going. Realize at this point you're going to see a few minor spoilers to this game. But for example, these are boxes that come with the game. You'll notice they have seals on them. These boxes can be opened throughout the campaign, but their contents are a secret. Now, other than that, there's not a ton of secrets in the game. It's like any other campaign game. You're going to be going through a scenario book and accomplishing different tasks. You'll be doing that by going to various places on a map that you will be adding stickers to as the game goes by. Those stickers are not a huge deal. You can go through and play the campaign multiple times. The stickers essentially show you which places you can go to, and it's not that big of a deal. In this game, there are 4 different characters that you can play, and you're going to be going through a scenario book where you'll be opening up the scenario book and actually playing on the maps in this book. And in fact, occasionally you will play a scenario where the map maybe is too big for the book, so in this case you'll find the rest of the map in another book that's included, a supplemental book, and put it together to form the map that you'll play on. The game comes with different tiles, and sometimes there's scenario tiles or things that will be placed on the board, and there are different bad guys that you will come across that you'll put in different stands, while your characters themselves are little miniatures that you'll be moving around. Each of the 4 characters will have a box full of all sorts of goodies inside it. And when you open up this box, you're going to have a character card for your character. So for example, this is the Red Guard. And there are 4 characters in this game: Red Guard, Demolitionist, Hatchet, and Void Warren. And each of these is going to have some various things with them, like a miniature. You're going to come with a deck of cards for your character, actually 2 decks of cards for your character. One of them is a modifier deck, a secret deck that you can't look at yet, actually 2 of them that you will be adding to the game as you progress through it. A stat sheet where you can write down the different stats for your character, and then a reference card and some tokens that match your character that you might use. Each character is going to have a dial here during a scenario where you'll keep track of their hit points and you'll keep track of experience points, because as you gain experience points, you will go up in various levels. This game introduces a deck of cards that you'll notice these blue boxes here. These are explanations of how cards work. You'll start with some just very basic cards, and as the game goes by, you will replace these cards. So you'll see there's some cards here that say A on them. These cards are only for a tutorial state. You'll then eventually add B cards, and then as time goes by, replace them with your actual cards. As the game goes by, when you play this game, you will usually have a hand of cards that equal your level. So these all say 1, and as you go up levels, you'll have a chance to add add to choose between multiple cards to put into your deck. And so you'll be able to customize your deck. Hand management is really a big deal in the Gloomhaven games. You have cards that are essentially split into two halves. They also have a number in the middle. Each round of the game, everyone is going to be playing two cards. Using one of them, you're going to be choosing one of them to be your initiative number. And then the characters are going to go in order from the smallest to the largest number. After you play the pair of cards, you are then going to use the top of one card and the bottom of another card. And you can always use a card as a basic 2 attack or a basic 2 move, but you can't do both bottoms and both tops. These cards have a lot of different things, and I'm not going to explain how all the different cards work. Sometimes by using a card you'll get an experience point. Most of the time when you use cards you will discard them, but sometimes you will totally remove them from a scenario. And so there's all sorts of combinations that you're going to be able to pull off, especially as you add more and more cards into your deck. Enemies are going to be handled differently. You'll have an enemy card, and this card will be put in here based on what level you're fighting of the enemy. So you can see that's a level 2 and a level 1, and then enemies are even further split between normal enemies and the yellow base ones, which have a stronger numbers. For example, white base Vermling Raider has 5, this one has 10. The elite ones have more. This is how far they move, and this is how much they attack. Each enemy that comes with its own special deck of cards. These are Vermling Raider cards. And each round of the game you'll be flipping one of these to give that enemy its initiative number, and then it will do a very programmed thing. For example, this says it will move its movement points, 1 less than those, and then if possible it will attack a hero with a range of 3, and it can, if it hits the hero, it's going to add no damage, no extra damage. Some of the cards will add extra damage, and it will do the special effect wound. And all these cards are different, and sometimes when you draw a specific card, you'll reshuffle the deck so that you're never quite sure what cards are going to be coming out in what order. You'll be keeping track. You'll have the enemies will have numbered bases, and so you can have up to 6, or some of these cards can go up to 10 of the different enemies. And this way, if you do 4 hit points to one of the Vermling Raiders, you just put those on that section of the card to keep track. Combat in the game is going to use these modifier decks, and there's different decks. Each character will start with their own deck. The enemies have their own deck, and these decks will be modified as the game goes by, even made specific to each character. And whenever you attack someone, you'll do the attack and you'll flip over the top card of this deck. Most of the cards will often do nothing. They add no modifier. They might add 1. They might subtract 1. They might subtract 2. They might cause the attack to miss completely and reshuffle the deck, or they might do double damage and reshuffle the deck. There are ways to add more blessing cards, these double damage cards to your deck, or curses, these ones that cause you to completely miss to the deck as you play through it. Like any role-playing game, you're also going to be able to find equipment and pay the cost for it. Some equipment you'll be able to use once per round. Some equipment you'll be able to use once per scenario. And some of the equipment's permanently in place. And as the game goes by, you'll have more and more equipment available to you depending on what scenario you're in. One of the interesting things about Gloomhaven is on how the cards work. So I already mentioned to you that you're going to be playing a pair of cards together. So when you play the 2 cards together, when you're done, you're going to put them in your discard pile. Each character is going to start with a certain number of cards that they're going to have in their hand at the beginning of each scenario. When you are completely out of cards, you're going to need to take a rest. You can take a short rest where you'll take all those cards that you've done, shuffle them up, and one of them is gone, lost for the rest of that scenario. So then the hatchet here would be down to 9 cards. Pick up your cards and keep going. Eventually you're going to not have enough cards to pick up, and that's when your character's exhausted. You can also take a long rest where you will pick one of your cards and put it over here in the lost pile. You don't have to do it randomly, but when you do that, that's pretty much all you do that turn. And you can also heal heal health points, and there's a few other things that can happen. But if you lose all your health points or you lose your cards, a character can become exhausted. As a team, you may still win that mission, but if all the characters become exhausted, then you've lost. Other things that are in the game, you might run across some events that come in the city. They'll give you some flavor text, and then characters will have a choice that they'll pick, and then you'll flip the card over and choose and see what happens, kind of like a choose your own adventure story. There are also status effects that can happen to players, and players, there's a magic system where some cards will only work if you can use a token, but you have to imbibe these things. Some cards will let you move it up to strong, and then they'll wane each turn, but you can move it up, and then you can use it to have different cards go off. So it's kind of a very unique, interesting magic system. There is a lot more in this game, and while there is 2 rule books that come with the game, so there is a learn to play guide, and what this does is, if you've never played before, it tells you how to play scenario 1. It explains what the game does, it shows you scenario 1, walks you through it, blah 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 blah, tells you about the basic thing. When you're finished with the game, it teaches you a little bit more before going into scenario 2, and this will continue until you're finished with scenario 5. There it talks to you about leveling up and how you go up into scenario levels, and gives you some final rules, and from scenario 6 to scenario 25, I think, you'll play with the full rules. There is another book here that's a glossary, which not only tells you, if I want to know how objectives work, there's the rules on that. So you have all this information on here. It also kind of shows you the card anatomy. It tells you what cards do, how you move, the different things that can happen, how monsters work, how they choose who their targets, all the components in the game, as well as a treasure index, which will show you what treasures you find at certain points in the campaign. And if you already own Gloomhaven, this tells you what's compatible with the original game and what is not compatible. Essentially, the 4 characters can be used in the main game, and some of the battle goals can be, but the monsters, items, and events do not cross back and forth. If you own regular Gloomhaven, you can even bring those characters into this game and play with them. So you have 4 books that come with this game: the base rule book, the glossary here, the scenario book, which has all the different scenarios that you'll play as you go through, and then this additional supplemental scenario book, which just adds some stuff to the different things in case the map is too big, or just some more information. Gloomhaven, the original version, is one of my favorite games of all time. There's a lot of things I like about it. That card system is phenomenal. The level advancement of these characters, that modifier deck I showed you, how you can add cards to it, subtract cards from it, you're making that modifier deck yours, adding new cards to your hand, is phenomenally well done. And every character in this very unique, interesting universe that is not just a carbon copy of other fantasy universes like Dungeons and Dragons, it is its own living, breathing universe, and each character is very, very diverse and intriguing. So I was curious about the Jaws of the Lion. Is this kind of like a step back? But what this game is it presents a definitive way to learn and play Gloomhaven, to the point where I wouldn't be enthralled if they took what they had here and stuck it in, for example, Frosthaven, or even went back and put it in reprints of Gloomhaven, because it's so well done. To learn how to play this game in 5 scenarios is amazing. Now, scenario 1 here, I think you'd have to go out of your way and roll over and die to lose it. In fact, they don't even tell you what happens if you lose it. I just don't think it's possible. But it's a way to get a grasp on some of the basic mechanisms of the game. And this game comes with extra cards for the characters and things that after a few scenarios, you get rid of those. You'll never use them again. But they teach the game, and it's done so well. So well. I love it. If I was ever going to teach someone Gloomhaven, I would never pull Gloomhaven out. I would always use Jaws of the Lion. It has one of the best tutorial and get to know a fairly complex game in a series on that I've ever seen in my life. It's phenomenal. And this game, everything about the complexities of Gloomhaven is put down into just this really nice thing. And I'll tell you this. The idea of having the maps here in this scenario book is fantastic. And it blew my mind when I saw that the supplementary book. I was like, well, yeah, but what if I want to play with a slightly bigger map? Da, 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 da. So awesome that I would want to start a petition and go back to the original Gloomhaven, and if they sold all the scenarios that are in that game in a book form, 1 or 2 books that you could put together, I would pay full price for it on the spot, because it is that much better. In the original one, you put a bunch of tiles together and you spend a lot of time setting up and a lot of time tearing down. Here I'm like, da da, and it's done. So amazing. I love it. And it's going to be really hard to go back to the map building of Gloomhaven after how well it's done here. Now, there are 4 characters in here, and all 4 are very distinct, not just from each other, but from the characters in the original Gloomhaven. Not only that, they're fairly basic characters. They have some cool aspects to them, but they're not difficult. There's a few characters in Gloomhaven that you can unlock as time goes by, where they're a little wonky and weird and interesting to work with. That doesn't mean they're bad characters, but they're not a character I would say a new player should play. The new character can play any of these 4. And not only that, the Hatchet character in this game is by far my favorite Gloomhaven character, period. Better than any of the ones in the first one. I like him that much. He's married to his axe. Not quite literally, but pretty close. Or his Hatchet, anyway. I love that character. Such a cool character. The monsters are cool. This game offers a lot. I know some people are going to look at Gloomhaven and say this doesn't offer a lot. There's 25 scenarios. You will not play all 25 scenarios because there's some branching paths in here and such. And I have not played through the whole campaign myself, but there is a ton. At least each scenario takes an hour, at least, and then there's stuff in between and beyond there. So we're talking many hours of play, and then you can easily go through and play it again. You can play with different characters. The game has a really well done setup that you can play this with just 2 characters. Even if you play it by yourself, you control 2 characters, and then if you 2, 3, and 4, there's a different amounts of monsters basically that show up in each scenario. And it's great. The story's good. The original Gloomhaven, you dealt with Gloomhaven somewhat, but you were usually gallivanting around the country. This game takes place in the city of Gloomhaven. Now, if you've never played Gloomhaven before, the card system here is going to throw you off the first time. Yes, you have hit points in Gloomhaven. You don't want to lose your hit points, but that card management system where you need to beat a scenario before your cards run out. Because let's say that one character I showed you has 10 cards. When I take 5 turns, if I haven't discarded cards to the lost pile, which is possible because some cards that are really powerful are one-time use. But if I haven't, then in my next, that's 5 turns, then I have 9 cards. So at most I'm going to have 4 turns before I get the cards back. Then 4 more turns, and then I lose another card. Now I'm down to 3. And you can see it kind of snowballs. And there are scenarios where I'm down to the last 2 cards I have, and like, I hope I can win. But you have such freedom to build these really cool combos, like if I move here and then do this. And so this game is not about chucking a bunch of dice. There's no dice in Gloomhaven. It's about using your cards to maximum effort. There's still that luck with that modifier deck. And sometimes you're like, this will be a walkover, and you draw the one card that says complete miss. And sometimes you hit that double damage right when you need it. It's so fun. It is so fun. Now, I am always cautious, about playing a big, grandiose game and then playing, in this case, what is essentially a starter version of it. But not only is this a starter version of Gloomhaven, and like I said, one of the best ways to teach a game that's ever come out, I think I had more fun playing this than the original one because, first of all, the ease of entry was so well done. I know how to play Gloomhaven, but the last time I played Gloomhaven on a personal level was like 5-6 months ago, and I was like, okay, I got to, relearn everything. Right in there. Taught you so perfectly well. And playing with someone who's never played Gloomhaven before, they'll just go through and go, yes, 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 this makes sense. The game holds your hand and then walks with you, then walks 10 steps behind you and says you're doing a good job, and then puts a GPS on you and lets you go off to school on your own, and eventually you can do it on your own. It's great. This is a 10 out of 10 game. And then even without all that, it's just great. You love Gloomhaven? Here's more fun for you. Start with these 4 characters, go through. Bring in your other 4 characters. I know a lot of people who play Gloomhaven are going to get it just to get these 4 characters to put in the actual Gloomhaven. But don't skip these scenarios. They're fun. They're entertaining. Fantastic. Recommend it. Highly recommend it. Check it out. That's Gloomhaven, Jaws of the Lion. Dice Tower Judgment, phenomenal.